My unit plan is based on race, racism, and social injustice. But more specifically, day one will be started with the civil rights movement. I plan on discussing how the civil rights movement did not just start in the 1950s and 60s and how it was deeply enrooted throughout our country. Day one will be focused on important people and figures who were the leaders of the civil rights movement. I plan on teaching my students about how successful that African Americans were at getting rights for their people, but also telling them that many civil liberties are still in shambles today. This is where pop culture comes into play for my unit plan. Day two will be based on Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech and Carmelo Anthony's, Chris Paul's, Dwayne Wade's, and LeBron James' speech at the ESPYs about the Black Lives Movement and how they need to make a stand, as well as all other athletes, against police brutality. My students will be required to watch both videos and then do speech analysis of both. I will want my students to be able to pick out similarities and differences that Martin Luther King and the four African American athletes of today had, and why there are still civil injustices that are showing up every day in 2016 America. As well, with the two speech analysis, I plan on having the students evaluate different platforms for activism and the role that social media played in the protest of today with the Black Lives Matter movement compared to what the media did with the protests of the civil rights movement in the 1950s and 1960s. Day three of my lesson will act as a little bit of a review for the civil rights movement, and then it will mainly focus on the Black Lives Matters movement. I plan on having my students review a timeline of black activism in the United States from the 1950s, the 1960s, and compare it to today. I want them to identify core themes of the civil rights and Black Lives Matter movement, and I will want them to collaborate to consider accomplishments of civil rights activists during the racial inequality that they faced in the 1950s and 1960s to the racial equality and police brutality that African Americans are facing every day in 2016. Finally, I believe this is the perfect popular culture social studies classroom unit. Not only will students be learning about the civil rights movement and the things that the likes of Malcolm X and Martin Luther King fought for, but they will be able to better understand what they are living through every day with the Black Lives Matter movement and how social injustices are very much present and alive in 2016 as they were in the 1950s and the 1960s.